Today we're going to be talking about labor flexibility, specifically internal flexibility. What is labor flexibility? Labor flexibility is the speed which labor markets adapt to changes and fluctuations. There are two types of labor flexibility, internal and external. Internal is where a company adapts to changes without terminating current employment relationships. To determine the degree of internal flexibility of a company, you have to look at two factors. First, look at the extent of whether a subject matter is regulated by collective bargaining, for example, wage flexibility. The second factor to look at is the employer's ability to change terms and conditions of employment in order to adapt to changes, for example, working times and tasks. External is where a company adapts to change by changing the size of their workforce. So now that we know the two, let's talk a little bit more about internal flexibility. What is so important about internal flexibility? The government prefers internal flexibility since it refrains employees from getting fired. It is, however, difficult to determine how far this internal flexibility can stretch. What changes are minor and what changes are so big that the employee might even try to fight the change in court. Internal flexibility exists of minor and major changes. Now, what can be defined as major changes? Major changes can be functional and organizational flexibility, suspension of the employment relationship, substantial modification of the working conditions, or a change in geographical mobility. First, let's talk about functional organizational flexibility. Functional organizational flexibility is changing the employee's function as long as it is within the contractual agreement. Let's check out an example on the next slide. An example of this would be Billy. Billy is currently a secretary. His boss has now decided to promote him to team leader of a new project involving market research for a new product. Next is substantial modifications of the working conditions. This is major changes to the employee's job description. The bigger changes can include economic, technological, organizational, and market causes. Changes must be fair and of good cause. An example of this would be Alice. Alice works for a company that's not doing so well and is selling less products. From now on, her boss decides to tell her that she has to work less hours from now on. Another type is the suspension of the employment relationship. This is a temporary suspension of the employment contract. The worker will still be compensated by the employer and can return to their job. An example of this would be Betty's situation. Betty is taking maternity leave to take care of her baby, Junior. She is the CFO of the major company and her job will be there once she gets back from maternity leave. Our last type we're talking about is geographical mobility. This is when the job requires the employee to move either temporarily or long-term. An example of this would be about Jace. Jace currently works in the United States, but he is now being relocated to Spain in Madrid so that he can focus on another project for a long term. Thanks for watching!
Created using Powtoon.